Don Pruitt had run the boxing program at Kellerman's Rec Center for 19 years, and in that time he had seen every kind of man walk through the gym door. He had seen the ones who wanted to fight, and the ones who wanted to look like they could fight, and he had learned quickly that those were two very different categories of human being. He had seen the loud ones and the quiet ones and the ones who lasted 3 sessions before the smell of sweat and liniment got to them. What he had never seen, not in 19 years, was a man walk in off the street on a Tuesday morning with a shy-eyed 8-year-old at his side and ask, as politely as if he were asking for directions, whether there might be a volunteer coaching slot available. The man's name was Cal Arden. He was somewhere in his middle 30s, broad across the shoulders in the way of someone who had trained seriously at some point in his life, and never quite let the muscle go, with work-roughened hands and the kind of eyes that looked at a room carefully before speaking. The boy at his side, his son, he said, name of Theo, had a library book tucked under his arm and did not look up when Don extended his hand. You coached before? Don asked. Amateur level, Cal said, a while back. Don looked him over. The man was calm. He wasn't selling himself, wasn't pulling out credentials, wasn't trying to fill the room with himself. He just stood there and waited, and there was something in that stillness that Don couldn't quite place. He told him they'd try him out for the month. Volunteer, no pay, no promises. They had 12 kids in the junior program, and 3 of them were at a level where they'd be competing in the regional youth tournament in under 4 weeks. That's fine, Cal said. He set Theo up with the library book in the folding chair by the water fountain, told him he'd be able to see him from anywhere on the floor, and went to wrap his hands. Don watched him do it. Even the way the man rapped told you something. The gym belonged to Renata Kellerman, who had inherited it from her father 8 years earlier, and had run it with the particular efficiency of someone who had learned that if you did not run things tightly, things did not get run at all. She was 34, with her father's straight spine and her mother's habit of reading a room before saying anything in it. She had a son named Marcus, who was 9 years old and had been coming to the gym since he could walk, first in a carrier on her back and then on his own 2 feet, quiet and watchful the way she was. He had started in the junior program 6 months ago. He had not, in Don's assessment, shown any particular gift for the sport, but Don had learned long ago that gift was only part of the question. The other part was what a kid was carrying, and Marcus Kellerman, without anyone saying so directly, was clearly carrying something heavy. His father had left when the boy was 6. Renata did not talk about it. Don did not ask. What he knew was that the boy arrived at the gym each day with his mother, trained without complaint, and spoke to the other kids as little as possible. When Cal Arden first paired with Marcus, not by Don's design, just by how the drill shook out, Don expected nothing notable. Cal crouched to the boy's level, said something Don couldn't hear from across the floor, and held out his own fists for Marcus to tap. The boy tapped them. Cal nodded, said something else, and Marcus, after a moment, nodded back. That was the first day. Don filed it away and went back to watching the older kids on the bag. Cal showed up Thursday with Theo. Library book swapped for a spiral notebook. The boy filled with something Don never quite saw the content of. And by the end of that first week, Don had adjusted his estimate of the man upward. Twice. He moved around the floor the way you moved when the gym had been a second home once, instinctively, without looking at his feet, always aware of where each kid was without appearing to watch anyone in particular. He never raised his voice. When a 12-year-old named Darnell kept winding up his right hand, telegraphing the punch by a full half-second, Cal corrected it 4 times across 20 minutes before Darnell stopped doing it. Not by drilling it or repeating himself, but by changing the angle slightly each time. A small variation that made Darnell feel the error himself rather than being told about it. Don had been correcting that same habit in kids for 2 decades, and he stood at the edge of the floor and watched a man he'd known for 4 days handle it better than he would have. He did not say anything about this to Renata. The thing about watching a good coach work, Don had always believed, was that you didn't see the teaching. You saw the student. The teaching was invisible. It happened in the spaces between the corrections, in the way a hand repositioned a shoulder without making a thing of it, in the way a voice stayed level even when a kid dropped his guard for the 4th time in a row. What Don began to notice, over the first week, was not anything Cal did in particular. It was Marcus. The boy began to arrive earlier, not by much, 5 minutes, then 10. But Don noticed because Marcus had never arrived early before. He came in, spotted Cal on the floor, and went straight to him. Cal would be wrapping his own hands or talking to one of the other coaches, and he would look up when Marcus came in and give him a single nod, the kind of nod that said, "I see you and I was expecting you," and the boy would get his gloves and wait. Don mentioned it to Renata on a Thursday evening when the gym had cleared out. He seems to like the new man, Don said carefully. Renata was wiping down the front desk. She didn't look up. He likes the stability of a routine, she said. Sure, Don said. He left it there. What he didn't tell her, because he wasn't certain how to say it, was that he had seen Marcus laugh that afternoon. Not the polite, brief kind of laugh that kids produce when an adult makes a joke and they feel they ought to respond. A real laugh, sudden and unguarded, brought on by something Cal had said while they were working on footwork. It had startled Don. In 6 months of the junior program, he had not heard that sound from the boy. Cal, for his part, said very little. He showed up on time. He worked the kids hard but without harshness. When Theo grew restless in the folding chair, and he sometimes did, flipping the library book over and craning his neck to watch the floor, Cal would call a water break, walk over, crouch down, and talk to him for 2 minutes, then go back to the session. Don observed this without comment. He had revised his initial assessment of the man several times now, each revision in the same direction. The regional youth tournament was held on a Saturday morning at the Civic Center across town, in a gymnasium that smelled of floor wax and cheap coffee. 12 clubs had entered. Kellerman's had 3 competitors. Marcus was the youngest, entered in the bantamweight junior bracket, and Renata stood in the second row of the folding chairs, with her arms crossed and her expression set in, the particular way she wore when she was more anxious than she wanted anyone to know. Don stood beside her. Cal was in the corner with Marcus, talking low, one hand resting easy on the boy's shoulder guard. Don had worked corners for 19 years. He watched Cal work this one the way a carpenter watches another carpenter frame a wall. Not competitively, just professionally reading the choices. The other boy in the bracket was bigger and had been competing for 2 years. Marcus had competed exactly once before, in a scrimmage, and had lost on points. The bell rang. What happened in the next 3 rounds was not a miracle. Miracles, Don had learned, were what people called things they hadn't watched closely enough. What happened was the result of 3 weeks of a particular kind of patient, methodical coaching, footwork drilled until it was reflex, a jab set so straight it came from the shoulder like a thought, and a habit of patience that Cal had apparently transferred to the boy through some means Don could not fully account for. Marcus moved. He didn't get excited. He didn't get rattled when the other boy pushed him to the rope in the second round and the gym went noisy. He reset his feet, found the angle Cal had shown him, and worked. He won by a split decision. The noise in the gymnasium was moderate. They were 12 clubs and a handful of parents, not a crowd, but what Don heard cut through all of it. From the corner, Cal's voice, quiet and level, "There you go, Marcus. Right there." The boy turned toward him before he turned toward anyone else. Renata uncrossed her arms. Don saw it from the side, the way her shoulders came down, the particular stillness of a person absorbing something they weren't prepared for. In the locker area afterward, a partitioned section of hallway with folding benches, the kids were changing and the parents were filtering in. Don was reviewing the bracket sheet when he heard it. Marcus had found his mother, and the boy's voice was low enough that Don caught it only because the hallway was quiet and he was standing close. "Mom." "I know, baby." Renata said, "I saw. I want him to stay." Don did not move. He looked at the bracket sheet without reading it. "Mr. Arden?" Renata said, after a moment. "He came in every day," Marcus said. "He talks to me like he's not going anywhere. I want him to stay." There was a silence of the kind that has weight in it. "Okay," Renata said. Her voice was different from the voice she used at the front desk. Quieter, like something had eased in it. "Okay, baby." Don folded the bracket sheet and walked back toward the gym floor. Cal was outside the partition, waiting for Theo, who was pulling on his jacket. He had the look of a man prepared to pack up and go home. No assumption. No expectation, just the ordinary readiness of someone whose shift was over. Don stopped beside him. "You available Tuesday?" he said. Cal looked at him. "What time?" 8, Don said. "Junior program starts at 8:30. I need someone there for warm-up." Cal nodded slowly, the same nod he'd given Marcus on the first morning. "I can do that." "It's not volunteer," Don said. "We're not flush, but it's not volunteer." Cal looked down at Theo, who was watching him with the quiet patience of a boy accustomed to waiting while adults sorted things out. Then Cal looked back at Don and said, "That'd be all right." Don gave him a nod and went to log the tournament results in the clipboard he kept on the equipment shelf. He wrote Marcus Kellerman's name under the winner column and paused there for a moment, looking at it. He had coached and watched and logged names in this gym for 19 years, and he knew as well as anyone that a split decision win in a junior bracket at a Civic Center tournament was not a large thing in the world's accounting. But he had also learned Slowly, the way most true things are learned, that large things tend to grow from the smallest decisions. A man crouching to a boy's level on a Tuesday morning, saying whatever he said that made the boy nod, and then showing up the next day and the day after that, he capped the pen. In the hallway, Renata Kellerman had her hand on her son's shoulder and was guiding him toward the gym floor. She paused when she saw Cal, and something moved across her face. It's not quite a smile, but the held-back edge of one. Tuesday, she said simply. Tuesday, Cal agreed. Theo, beside him, had already found Marcus, and the two boys were walking ahead of the adults, talking the fast, overlapping talk of children who have recently decided they are friends. Theo still had his library book. Marcus was gesturing with both hands, showing something, and Theo was nodding along seriously, as if whatever was being demonstrated was worth getting right. Don watched them walk through the gym door into the afternoon light, the two boys side by side, and the two adults a measured step behind. And he thought that this was what 19 years of running a program in a working-class neighborhood gym added up to, in the end. Not the trophies on the shelf, or the ones who turned professional, though those mattered too, but the Tuesday mornings and the folding chairs, and the kind of man who sets his boy up with a library book and goes to work without needing anyone to know how good he is. It was enough, Don thought. More than enough. He put the clipboard back on the shelf and turned off the equipment room light.